You're listening to Alabama Tradition with Ryan Fowler and Martin Houston on Tide 100.9 in Tuscaloosa.
O'Reilly! You need parts? O'Reilly Auto Parts has parts. Need them fast? We've got fast. No matter what you need, we have thousands of professional parts people doing their part to make sure you have it. Product availability. Just one part that makes O'Reilly stand apart. The professional parts people.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Championships. 27 SEC titles. 131 first-team All-Americans. 70 postseason appearances. 39 postseason victories. This is Alabama football. And this is Alabama Tradition with Martin Houston and Ryan Fowler on Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
So here we go. It's Alabama Tradition, the past, present, future, the Alabama Crimson Tide. I'm Ryan Fowler. We'll talk to William Barger coming up in about 15 minutes. If you love recruiting, you're going to love William Barger. He's going to dive into these offensive linemen, talking about J.C. Latham, guys who have committed to the University of Alabama and are part of a class that ranks right now number 2 nationally and number 1 in the SEC. The Brockemeyer brothers, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about even the defensive side of the football with Payne. We'll talk about recruiting, and we'll really break down what he thinks about this upcoming season. William's a Crimson Tide insider, but also a former offensive lineman. He's going to share some thoughts. The best backfield in the country, the best offensive line in the country. You're breaking in a new quarterback, and I say new, a guy that has some experience. We'll talk about that. What does he think about Bryce Young? William Barger, do not miss it, coming up in about 15 minutes. Alabama Tradition as we open up a brand new show every Tuesday right here from 6 until 7, and we're going to do some things unique with it. Love to have you jump on board at 205-342-9904, 205-342-9904. If you want to jump in, we're going to take phone calls for the early part of the program and dive into a couple different things. But Alabama practice at the earliest it could start is August the 17th. So we talk about 50-plus days away from Alabama. And whom? Well, we don't know yet. But we're thinking, is still a chance that Georgia is out there? You've heard a lot of discussions, and I've heard the arguments both ways. I've heard that they'll flip the schedule and they'll put some of the SEC West teams at the beginning. And I've heard the argument that they'll put some of the SEC West teams at the end because you may have some wiggle room if things go sideways, but you could really need the wiggle room one way or the other. Let's continue the conversation at 205-342-9904. Pat, good afternoon, man. You're in the game.
First off, Ryan, I want to thank the good Lord that he made us Americans and that by his grace that he made us Alabama fans because we could be in Beirut. That was a biggest blast. Have you had a chance to see it yet? Or
I did.
Been busy?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, my Lord. If they said that was just fertilizer, because I heard, man, they tried to say that it was basically the same thing that blew up the Murr building, in Oklahoma. I'm telling you, I've never seen a blast that big. I mean, when you talk about that Moab bomb, it doesn't make an explosion any bigger than that, Ryan.
I got you. Fertilizer is nitrogen's a pretty powerful tool, my friend.
Yeah, well, they would have had to have touched off a silo in order to have made a blast that big, I think. But then that may be because I'd read a little further down and they did talk about grain and stuff not being able to, or grain not being any good, or may have destroyed some grain. I don't know. But anyway, hey, what I called about those good things, Alabama recruiting. When you get to talk to them, if I can't get back into you, I'd like for you to talk to him about how is Nick going to finish off the most fantastic offensive line on paper in his recruiting career.
Looks great from here, does it not?
No, hey, and from and everything that I'm hearing, I get all these naysayers, but everything I'm hearing, this offensive line's not finished yet, Brian. And hey, and if that be the case, oh my goodness. But hey, so present and future, hey, it won't be this year, that'll be next year. But but we've got a fantastic quarterback that's going to be behind that offensive line. And from what I'm understanding and what I'm hearing, that we've got a chance of getting a couple more very good receivers to go with that, with our receiving core that we already have, which is which has some 5 stars in it. You know what I'm saying?
What if Nick Saban was able to take this group and to go back on the offensive side of things? You build this trenches. I mean, as you're thinking about it, let's say 2021, 2022, you've got this group of offensive linemen. And listen, the cupboard's not bare in T-Town. They got a great offensive line here. They got some youngsters that are coming up. Now, you're going to lose a lot of these guys after this season, but your cupboard is not bare.
Oh, no, that's what I'm talking about. Hey, man, the future is so bright. We've got to wear crimson-colored welding shades.
I like it. I like it. And, I like Nick Saban going back, and not that he's ever lost that, but listen, as much as we want to make college football fancy and, trick them and out in open space, and there's advantages to that. I think there's no doubt that's the direction of the game, high-scoring, explosive. But listen, you still win football games in the trenches. My guy whipping your guy.
Gotcha.
I mean, don't you think? I mean,
absolutely. And from what I'm hearing, with the defensive linemen that we're going to add to this class, you're going to have iron sharpening iron every day. Think about it, Ryan. Iron sharpening iron every day. Defensive line against one of the best offensive lines in the country.
Sure.
Hey, it's going to be scary again. I can see it now. When people see Alabama on their schedule, they're just going to mark down a loss and go head on back to business.
But yeah, I mean, look at this offensive line that's currently here.
Yeah.
Pat, this is no doubt,
Hey.
unanimous top offensive line of the country. Now, I hope Kyle Flood can break them down, and maybe they'll start camp thinking that they're worst offensive line of the country. I mean, these coaches have a great way of doing that, and I'm sure Kyle Flood doesn't like the positive publicity coming out about his guys, but this is a great offensive line unit.
Yeah, but you're talking about past, present, and future, your show now. Hey, go back and look at the teams that Alabama will play in the SEC, at the records against Alabama, and hey, the only one that's even relatively close would be the Borners over there, believe it or not. The amount of times that LSU's won, the amount of times that Pole, Mississippi State has won has been ridiculous. It's a ridiculous. I mean, you got to go back a long time for Mississippi State to win a ball game.
Would you go back to LSU and you go back to Auburn this upcoming year? I think they've got one returning starter among both teams there. None at Auburn. They return no starters. How would you like to be Bo Nix coming into that season?
Facing two of the top middle linebackers in the country. McMillan's going to get to play a little bit. He's going to be able to rest folks up. But you're going to have a Dylan Moses that's fresh, that has good legs underneath him. I mean, how scary is that going to be for an opposing quarterback? Hey, remember back in '85 when the Bears had a fellow by the name of Mike Singletary? You look across the line, it showed the camera looking at the middle linebacker. I think it's what Singletary played. And all you could see was them big white eyes looking at you, coming toward you. Hey.
Well, Pat, listen, wear your mask now. Are you still wearing your mask every day?
Absolute number one. I'm staying in. I hadn't been to the store today at all. I hadn't been out. But when I did go out, not only do I wear a mask, but I also wear a shield.
Well, and just remember,
and that's what Fauci now. That's what he's now recommending: that a mask and a plastic shield. Some type of really good goggles. Some type of eye shields.
Just remember, Pat, if you go out, you got to go after 11 o'clock at night.
Going out on Wednesday night. On Wednesday night after church, there's not as many people out on Wednesday night either.
Okay. Well, I mean, 11 o'clock though is when COVID stopped sharing, according to
I got you. Yeah, but see, some of these stores are closing now. Hey, but they've closed down the Walmart down in Tillman's Corner, Alabama. That sounds out on the west side of Mobile. They completely shut it down to go in and do a deep cleaning. That is that many people with COVID.
Gotcha.
That's sad. All right, hey, we got to quit reporting these COVID cases, man. We got to play football.
Well,
they got the right idea out in Colorado. Hey, have a blessed one, Ryan. Hey, if they get caught with doing that, they in some serious trouble.
Yeah, right.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a blessed day. You know I'm kidding.
No doubt.
Right.
Thank you, Pat.
Bye-bye.
We continue right here. We're going to get into a lot of different conversations. We're going to talk about it. William Barger, former Alabama offensive lineman. We call him a Crimson Tide insider. He could plug us in. We're going to talk recruiting. We're going to talk about this upcoming season. William Barger coming up in a couple of minutes here in T-Town on Alabama Tradition, the past, present, and future of the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Get 15% off a set of BrakeMess Select, Select Pro, or Import Direct brake pads and 2 rotors now at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Tide 100.9 WTID-FM. The station in Tuscaloosa for ESPN Radio. Your home for Alabama sports. Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app. You are listening to Alabama Tradition with Martin Houston and Ryan Fowler. Your connection to Tuscaloosa and the University of Alabama athletics on Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
So we continue. William Barger, former offensive lineman at the University of Alabama. We call him a Crimson Tide insider. Helps us plug in with so many different things. We're going to talk a lot of stuff in college football. Hey, William, I appreciate you coming back on. I'm sorry last week we had a little technical problems, but I'm glad we got you back on. I hope all is well.
I'm doing good, Ryan. How about you, man?
Good. I feel like last week like I was fumbling and Coach Stallings was staring at me is what happened.
Well, after I guess on both sides we finally waved the white flag and gave up. I was like, I haven't been hung up that many times since I was 16 years old and was trying to get a girl to go out with me for the first time.
Right. Well, and I looked at the guys during one of the breaks. I said, just play interviews, man. Play interviews. But, William, I appreciate you coming back on for a couple of minutes. Let me get your thoughts. Just look ahead to college football. From a player perspective, what do you see in the upcoming season? Do you think we'll play the game? What would be your concerns? Just give you the flexibility to go where you need to go with all this different pandemic stuff.
I mean, Ryan, I'll be honest. I think the game day experience is going to be, more of a change, so to speak, for the fan experience and maybe the media experience. Versus, what the players encounter on the field. I don't think it's any secret that, a lot of college football programs have had, a high number of players, test positive for the COVID since this outbreak started. And, they're all in such good shape and at the peak of health. Most of them haven't developed symptoms. But I fully expect it to, go off, and I'm kind of excited about it. I wish they'd make it permanent. Let's start the season at, the end of last week in September, first weekend in October, and take the heat aspect out of it, and play on. I think now they've got the SEC championship game scheduled to go off Saturday before Christmas. I like it. I'm looking forward to it.
You look at 10 conference games, and, this is one of the days that maybe we'll discuss, the things that will change that may never go back. You look at 10 conference games. When you think about the SEC, if you're predicting right now, you think anybody can run through this thing undefeated and win all 10 games? And we don't even know the schedule. I mean, that's it's a part of it.
Yeah, no, I think this 2020 Alabama team's capable of it. I mean, this is a very, very talented team, and I think it has a chance to, be a very explosive, nasty offense. I mean, I'll say this. I mean, I think if Pete Golding can just put a C+, B- defense on the field, that they've got a chance of running the table.
William, what do you see in Kyle Flood? Because we've had a chance to kind of study him and understand him for the year. What do you see in Kyle Flood as offensive line coach?
I like his philosophy. I think, I think he does a really good job of identifying and getting the 5 best players, on the field. I think you saw, some growing pains with, Alex Leatherwood's, first full season at left tackle with Landon Dickerson early on. When Owens is at center and Dickerson showed the versatility to move over to center. And, I think he does a good job, number one, of identifying and getting the 5 best players on the field. And, it's not like he's got a hard job, Ryan. I mean, Nick Saban has done such a phenomenal job, since he's been at Alabama, of going out and identifying and recruiting and evaluating guys, because it's really true. I mean, there always are some outliers there, but you've got to have certain measurables, to be a center or a guard, and there's a big difference in being a right tackle and a left tackle. There's not a lot of Jonah Williams and Jedrick Wills walking the face of the earth that are talented enough to play all 5 positions, because it takes such a unique skill set. But, Kyle Flood's got the easiest job in the country because as an offensive line coach, because Nick Saban and, his evaluators do such a phenomenal job of going out and signing, great offensive linemen year in and year out.
On the flip side of that, take a look at Freddie Roach and what he has to work with that defensive line group. There going to be some depth over there, and I think that maybe is the key to that side of the football. But you kind of like what Freddie Roach has got to work with on that side of the football as well.
Yeah, because I think last year the fan base got a little bit disgruntled with the DBs, and I can promise you're not going to find a more talented DB in college football than Patrick Surtain. But I thought that was a little bit unfair. It's one of the reasons why, everybody used to brag on Antonio Langham and George Teague back in my day. But, I'm not to take anything away from them. They were both first-round draft picks. But, when you only have to cover somebody for 2.5 seconds before a John Coughlin or an Eric Curry ear-holes the quarterback, it makes your job as a DB a lot easier. And that facet was missing from the 2019 Alabama defense. They just couldn't generate, any type of organic pass rush without a blitz being dialed up. And I think, if you can, if Freddie Roach, identifies that Christian Barrymore is the guy that can come in there and generate a pass rush on the inside, I wouldn't be surprised if a Drew Sanders or a Will Anderson doesn't, factor in that rabbit package when they do need to generate a pass rush. Then all of a sudden you can start to see just how good a Josh Jobe and a Patrick Surtain is, because the quarterback doesn't have all day to sit back there and wait for somebody to get open.
William, what is the biggest difference between pressure up the middle and the pressure on the outside? I mean, I guess maybe this might be a quarterback question, but is
no, it's not. It's a real simple question.
Okay.
And this is coming from, when you see quarterbacks, when you stand behind that pass pro drill at the SEC level, and you see what that quarterback has to assimilate in 2.5 seconds, if you've got a halfway decent pass rush, that's all the time they've got before they're fixing to get hit. And, the goal is to have a Marcel Darius or a Quinnen Williams, because as an offensive lineman, the center and the 2 guards are responsible for establishing the depth of the pocket. The 2 tackles are responsible for the width. But if you've got a defensive line that can collapse the depth of that pocket inside, and you've got at least one, preferably two guys that can collapse that pocket from the outside and condense the width, then all of a sudden that quarterback's going to panic, and none of them, trust me, want to get hit. There's some that are better at taking hits than others, but none of those guys, want to take a hit from a Quinnen Williams or a Marcel Darius up the middle, or, a guy that's capable of running a 4.6 40 screaming off the edge. It's not a fun position to find yourself in.
Going back to Will Anderson and Drew Sanders for a couple of minutes, when you look at Drew Sanders, I mean, I've just heard just from rumblings here, just with some of the conditioning, some of the strength conditioning side of things, I mean, I hear he's off the charts, that he could play a lot of different positions. But if he's focused as an outside pass rusher and able to help us get some pressure on the edge, what are your expectations from him first year out?
I think he's probably going to factor in from game one. With not being able to go through spring practice, that kind of slow plays that development down a little bit, in my opinion, because it is a big jump. I mean, he's not going to be going up against, Johnny Smith, that's a left tackle, in Texas, that's, 6'2", 250 pounds. It's going to be, a guy that's a first-round draft pick probably. So he's going to have to get adjusted to the level of athleticism that he has to defeat at the point of attack, play-by-play. But, I think he's a guy you could put him at, outside linebacker, Jack or Sam. If he doesn't, outbulk and outgrow that position, he could be a great defensive end. But he's also a guy that you could stick over there on the other side of the football, and he could potentially be a Rob Gronkowski for you at tight end. So he's just one of those, physical freaks that could probably play multiple positions on both sides of the football.
And speaking of tight end, Carl Tucker should be able to make a contribution there pretty early as a grad transfer. Hearing some good things about him, too.
Yeah, and hopefully, obviously he's not, Irv Smith or O.J. Howard, but I think if they could just, have him develop into a guy that they can count on to, seal the edge on an outside zone play or, make a damn decent cutoff block on the backside, that would be his best contribution, is just being a solid run blocker. They've got so many weapons at wide receiver and running back that they can, Steve Sarkisian can dial up in the passing game. They don't need him to be Irv Smith or O.J. Howard, which would be nice to have, but that's just not who he is or who he's going to be.
So going back to the other side of the football with pass rush, isn't that a concern a little bit when you talk about your lack of experience in that secondary, because you're going to have to break in some new personnel other than Patrick Surtain? You've got some experience, but when you combine that with not being able, as it looks right now, to get pressure on the quarterback until at whatever point you combine 10 games in the conference, could that be the Achilles heel for Alabama?
I think, and I'll use this because I know you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. That's what drove me mentally insane, during the Kirby Smart era as the defensive coordinator at Alabama. And, this was a byproduct of, back when you still needed to have, a true 3-4 personnel to stop the downhill running programs. Back in, let's say from 2008 until 12 or 13 when all the zone read offenses came out. But, his so-called mush rush, where you just try and keep everything contained and in the middle of the field. Go back and think about that play that Johnny Manziel made. I think that was in 2014, maybe when they beat Alabama at home and Bryant-Denny. No, the easiest way to stop an explosive play happening isn't to contain the play. It's to put the quarterback on his back. So on a pass play, the easiest way to keep it from being successful, if you don't put the quarterback on his back, you make it where he's only got 2.5 seconds to diagnose what's going on in front of him.
William, when you look at the other side of the football in a lot of different areas, do you see a weakness on the offensive side? Is there something over there that you maybe need to question and get answered in fall camp?
Maybe at the two tackle spots, some depth being developed, behind Alex Leatherwood, and I'm going to make probably a pretty smart assumption that Evan Neal's going to end up being the right tackle. Who are those two guys behind them? If one of them were to get hurt. But outside of that, I don't think there are any questions. They're ridiculously deep in the interior portion of the offensive line. Maybe you don't have a halfway proven, number two guy at quarterback, but I think we probably both know who that's going to end up being. Just ridiculous and deep talent at wide receiver and running back. We still, haven't got a chance to see a guy like John Mechie at wide receiver, who probably could have started at a lot of other schools last year as a true freshman, or a healthy Trey Sanders. I think that second team guy at left tackle and right tackle are the only two questions I have.
Well, and everybody says, got to bring up special teams. We do need to find an answer for this, because we played the debate a couple of weeks ago, and we've done it about a year ago as well. When's the last time you felt comfortable about an Alabama kicker stepping up with a 35-yarder? We had to go back to Michael Proctor.
I'll disagree on that just a tad. I think by his senior year, after totally getting ruined as a true freshman by Mike Shula, I think Tiffin's son was that guy. But since then, I would agree. And I'm just going back to, the Nick Saban era. But, yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I always tell everybody is, as a struggle as the offense was when I was playing, you knew if you got it to the 40-yard line, either Philip Doyle or Michael Proctor, the two kickers that I played with, were going to put it right through the middle. I mean, they never missed.
William, as we transfer into another conversation, I want to go to recruiting as final at the end, but let me go back to Dr. Ray and Matthew Ballou, and you kind of watch these guys do their magic from a scientific approach. And I know we've had tons of conversations. You kind of understand maybe the approach that we were taking under Scott Cochran may have been not as good as advertised, because I keep seeing they put out these numbers and they'll say, well, we increased this much. And I'm going, really? In 6 months, we were able to drive that much of an increase? Now, I know what they're doing is world renowned, but maybe we were behind just a little bit in that area.
I honestly, Ryan, I think where you have to kind of put this into perspective. Jonah Williams was capable of starting in the Southeastern Conference as a 10th grader in high school. But if you go back and you look over the course of the Nick Saban era, ask yourself this. Show me some guys that once they got to Alabama that didn't get hurt, didn't struggle with injuries, and were developed into weight room freaks. Those guys were that way when they got on campus. Jonah Williams,
Jalen Hurts. I mean, he was a weight room freak.
Bradley Bozeman, Jalen Hurts as a skill player. So all the people that came to Alabama under Scott Cochran's program that were kind of lauded as being the weight room freaks, hell, they were freaks when they got there. Jonah Williams was a damn near a 500-pound bench presser and a 600-pound squatter, was the shot put and discus champion in the state of California. That's not something that Scott Cochran did. That's just the byproduct, what we already talked about, of Nick Saban doing such a great job, of developing physical freaks. Now, I will say this. I think, and it's a byproduct of over-conditioning those guys, I think he did do a good job of taking bad weight off of players, kind of in the lines of Daron Payne. But, I mean, that over-conditioning, not giving them enough time to recover. And, Nick Saban plays a little bit in this. But I think that's where the nonstop, red book of injuries comes from, is that, those kids, I'm not going to mention the player's name, but a former player that was about to go to the combine told me, he said, there's two things that we all hear from players that have gone up there before us. We get dinged on two things, despite, at this point, I think there was 4 national championships. Our medical jackets are as thick as the Metro Atlanta Yellow Pages, and nobody ever tests out in the top 10 for their specific position group. And, that stuck with me. And then I got the same player to give me a copy of the strength and conditioning program. And I mean, it wasn't much more advanced or up to par than the one that I went through in the early 90s. And basically all Cochran did, once Nick Saban couldn't lure Tommy Moffitt to leave LSU and come to Alabama with him, he went out and found a Tommy Moffitt protege who was actually a strength coach in the NBA at the time, which is a totally different sport, a totally different, training regime. And, he wanted to kind of rinse and repeat, with somebody that he was comfortable with while he was at LSU, and that's what you got.
So we're talking to William Barger, final couple of minutes here with him, and it's just kind of fun to see these guys work their magic. I hope it pays off on, the injury front, maybe the lack of, or trying to find a way, find a way to clean some of that up. And William, let's go to this offensive line class. There's a lot that's been said about it. Matter of fact, before you came on, there was a guy who called in and asked me to ask this question. Is this Nick Saban's best offensive line class? I guess we'll answer that question in 3 or 4 years. But on paper, what do you think about this offensive line class?
I certainly would say on paper it's got the potential to end up being that. There's been a lot of good ones, but at least on paper, I mean, this J.C. Latham, he's a slam dunk first-round draft pick. The Brockenheimer kid, the tackle, the taller one of the two brothers. Tommy. He's got to work on body lean and not getting overextended, and but the the feet and the athleticism are there. His brother that's going to end up being a center or guard, he's probably the nastier of the two, which that's kind of what you need to be. You need the nasty maulers at the 2 guard spots in the center, and you need the people with the ridiculous feet. There's a reason why the NFL pays left tackles and right tackles a lot more than what the guards and the centers make. It takes a special person to be able to get out there on an island with a edge rusher that probably runs a 4.6 40 with a 5-yard head start, and he's got the ability to pick and replace his feet up and protect that edge. I'm very impressed with it. I can't wait once these guys get on campus, what Ballou and Rhea can do with them. But, yeah, you're on to something. I think you need to spend a little bit more time, especially on your show, talking about what these two guys, I think Ballou and Rhea, if that's the correct pronunciation, when you combine them with the amount of money that Nick Saban is willing to dump into nutrition with Amy Bragg, there's all kinds of people that are, wondering and worrying when Nick Saban is going to retire. Why the hell would he want to retire unless he has a health problem that comes up? I mean, he has got this thing. Ryan, what's so funny since we're talking about recruiting, think back to the calls that I bet you were getting in May when Alabama and Nick Saban were sitting at 38th in the country in recruiting. And look at the ground he's made up during this pandemic, where there weren't any visits and, the coaches couldn't go see the players. There wasn't, the May evaluation period for the assistants to go out and about. I mean, he has made up a ton of ground in a short period of time. And I think you might see, the month of August, just keep right on rolling with great prospects committing to Alabama.
Well, I think he was being patient. Maybe looking back, maybe we can understand that a little bit. I mean, he wasn't handing out offers. Maybe he thought that he could get camps going on because at that point, he loves to be able to get them on campus, show them the
That's right.
Facility. So maybe he was being a little patient, and then he realized that this pandemic was not going to go away, and Nick Saban did what he could only control, and that was recruiting. And we've seen that before. When he's limited on areas that he can control, he tries to whip you in the recruiting front, and that's the competitor in him.
Well, don't discount or nobody should, because I personally stopped worrying about recruiting in February of 2008. I'm not saying I stopped
Sure.
paying attention to it, but hit the rewind button to when Nick Saban was flying back on the jet from Miami with Mal Moore, and I think he kind of trolled Mal a little bit, and he said, "Coach, I know you probably feel like you just went out and hired the best college football coach in the country," which I'm not. There's probably some other guys out there that are better than me. But you did just hire the best damn recruiter in college football.
And really, if one day that the book will be written about this dynasty, and it's got to be, it'll have to start with recruiting. It's got to.
Absolutely. I mean, look, there's no truer statement in big-time college football, Ryan. And, I think Bobby Bowden might have been the guy that first coined this phrase. It's not about the X's and O's. It's about the Jimmies and Joes. And Nick Saban goes out and gets the best Jimmies and Joes year in and year out.
Well, and I was talking to a friend of mine that covers in Mississippi, and we were talking about Lane Kiffin, and kind of the early report is that Lane is a little lazy on the recruiting front. He's a great play caller, one of the best. I mean, but you cannot take the Florida Atlantic and mismatch that with play calling in this league. You better go out and get some dynamic playmakers. And then you combine that with your excellent play calling, you can win football games. But he was telling me, he's like, yeah, he's a little bit lazy on the recruiting trail.
I've heard that same story. And, that was also, I would say from 2008 to when he was finally able to hire Lane, that was the bio that I was kind of given, is that Kiffin is the better play caller of the two. But, Nick swung and missed in trying to get Sarkisian to Alabama as his OC early on. But that's what I was told, is that Sarkisian may not be the better creative play caller, but he's the better quarterback developer.
Going to be a lot of fun to watch college football. Going to be a lot of fun to watch all this unfold. William, I appreciate you spending a couple of minutes with me. I looked up and I realized that you and I have been talking for 26 minutes and about 30 seconds. So I did not realize that until I looked up. So I'm sorry it took you a little bit long, but we were in depth in some good college football. It's good to catch up on the air, and I hope all is well with you and your family. You guys stay safe, and I appreciate you jumping on here in a couple of minutes here in T-Town.
Hey, Ryan, I'm enjoying it, and, hopefully here, sooner rather than later, things will get back to normal and we'll have some college football in our lives.
Let's do it. Thank you, William.
Thank you, Ryan.
Absolutely. It is Crimson Tide insider, former offensive lineman at the University of Alabama, William Barger, Redfish, as a lot of people know. William Redfish Barger. Guy loves college football, played at the University of Alabama. Always fun to be able to pick his brain about a lot of different things. We'll take a couple of phone calls if you want to jump in. We can do it. Alabama tradition. The past, present, and future of the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Get 15% off a set of BrakeMess Select, Select Pro, or Import Direct brake pads and 2 rotors now at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
A partially sunny sky this afternoon, the chance of a few isolated showers or thunderstorms through the evening hours. The high today 89, tonight's low 68. Tomorrow a good supply of sunshine with only a small chance of a shower during the day. The high at 90. I'm James Spain on the ABC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9.
Tide 100.9 WTID-FM and ESPN Radio, bringing you all things sports in T-Town. You're listening to Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app. The host of the game, Ryan Fowler, and the host of the Martin Houston Show, Martin Houston, have combined to offer a show filled with in-depth analysis of Alabama football and more. Alabama Tradition broadcasts live on Tide 100.9 every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. and is available live and on playback on numerous affiliates around the Southeast. Check out alabamatradition.com for a list of affiliates, as well as other great content.
All right, it's fun to be able to talk with the best fans of the country. We call it Alabama Tradition, the past, present, future of the Alabama Crimson Tide. Dion, good afternoon, man. You're in the game.
What's up, Ryan? How's it going?
Having an awesome day, man. Listen to William.
Yeah, man. I've been listening to you. I took a vacation this week from the old car building facility and went down to the beach.
Ding Don. Okay. I think they may have misunderstood. I now got the voice. Now I saw Dion.
Oh yeah, man.
How are you, man?
Oh yeah, man. Well, after last week, man, I had the back kind of go out on me last Thursday and Friday, so I had to get that straightened out, and then ended up just drove down to the beach and relaxed. It actually helped out a lot. But 2 days at the chiropractor didn't hurt any either. So you know my back injury situation, so it's always pops up the least.
I saw some photos of the beach, man. It looked great, looked relaxing, and sounds like you had a good time.
And honestly, it was supposed to be a weekend getaway before practice started on this Friday, but I guess that's up in the air, and who knows?
As you said that, I just thought about it, because Sunday would have been media day, right?
Yeah, it would have been this coming Sunday, I guess, or this past Sunday. But I guess maybe usually they have one practice and they had a media day on Sundays. I really don't know.
Yeah, Saturday or Sunday it would have been. Yeah, it would have been starting. Yeah. Yeah,
and that brings up another subject I was going to talk to you with. I mean, I've been listening a little bit on and off all day. I think the Las Vegas guy was around 2:00 or so. When maybe when the first few guests talking about he just didn't think it was going to happen this year. I'm thinking, man, every time I get a little bit of excitement, somebody talks me down and talks me out of it.
Yeah, that was on Jay's show.
I was on Jay's show right before you came on.
It was Tony Curry was talking about Vegas, and I heard him, and I'm not able to find it. I need to send Jay a text and see if I can find that, because I heard him and Tony talking about the Vegas odds and whether they're going to have football, and I thought Tony really made a good point. Jay did as well. Is those guys are normally spot on with their predictions.
They're usually pretty darn close. They don't take everybody's money, not my money, but they'll take everybody else's money somehow. So they're not in the way of losing this thing. And the same idea is with your situation. I'm kind of a part-time media person during football season, basketball season. I'm still up in the air on. I got a feeling that all the press conferences with Coach Saban on Monday and Wednesday, and then after the games, is probably going to be teleconference type stuff, because there can't be a lot of people in those small rooms. I just kind of wondered how they're going to handle all that. If they're going to limit the people in the stands, are they going to limit people in the press box, sidelines?
Well, I mean,
it's just odd thing I hadn't really thought about. When he was talking about it, I thought, man, I really hope it comes along. I hope you have a season, because myself, I would love to be there. But for you, it generates a lot of the radio show, a lot of the media. It's a full-time job. I mean, I'm blessed to be able to be there with you and hang out and do stuff, but it's not much writing on it as far as my life, and it's just whole weird.
Yeah, I wonder just a couple of minutes when you back up and you think about, okay, so how are we going to manage this? How are we going to manage it to the point, let's be a little transparent here. I think the goals, sometimes the communication has always been to shut the door on media. And I think that's the way they almost kind of make us feel, right? That we're more of a burden than we are to actually, do it, right? I mean,
how many Mondays have me and you've been sitting on that front row, and we kind of picture that right hand gets to moving, then that right foot gets to moving. It's time to quiet, because he's sitting there not go off.
Sure.
The next question is going to get him.
Well, and so I back up a couple of minutes. Would this not be the perfect time to implement that? Limit media availability, limit press conferences. You think Nick Saban enjoys coming in and talking to us? No. So they'll put him on a Zoom.
And the thing about it is, they gave it a perfect test run during SEC media days. I mean, it could be a situation where if you got a question, email it in, tweet, whatever, and we'll pick out the ones and say, hey, we're going to answer these questions. And they've been doing the teleconference type stuff all over the nation with Coach Saban on ESPN. It'd be the perfect time to transfer into that. I would not like it because I enjoy going in there and watching it and doing the videos and stuff. But times are changing, and it might be what Saban, he gets what he wants on as far as the media stuff. But, I would love to be there. I want to see a season. I'd love to be there on Saturdays doing pictures and enjoying that part of it. But at the same time, I'll sit at home if guys like you who depend on that time of year. I mean, it drives your show. It drives all the ratings for everybody in the world. But I just don't know. Like I said, every time I get to feeling pretty good about a season, somebody comes along and says, I don't see it happening.
Well, it
kind of scares me a little bit.
Well, it does. I mean, when you look and, listen, I go out to practice and I spot stuff and I come back and I'm able to communicate that. But it's never – communications is not about me. I could give two rips if Nick Saban ever talks to me. I like him. I mean, don't get me wrong. But, I mean, I don't need him to talk to me to make my day a success. But the part is what by hearing him talk or by seeing practice. See, we're the liaison between fans and the University of Alabama.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what creates that interest. And I was on up in North Alabama with Brett Beard and Harold Bug earlier today, and we were talking about this. And I said, that's the issue. That is the issue, is that disconnect begins getting further and further and further. And, we're there to create an interest, to help, well, not by ourselves, but we help facilitate that interest. And
I mean, honestly, I've only asked Nick Saban 2, maybe 3 questions, and all those times it's been in the media days during the bowl games and the playoff situation, and it's a deal where he's sitting there and he's like waiting for somebody. You know how it is on the field before on the media days on the bowl game. He's sitting there in that corner. He's begging somebody to ask a question, and I'm not asking about different players that I know is not going to create anything bad, but I think he likes talking about players. A lot of times. Other than that, I don't dare raise my hand or even think about a question on Mondays because I'm not there to do that. I'm there to video it and put it up for Bama Online as soon as I can. Because we got enough people there to ask questions anyway, and most of the questions are going to be covered. But I'm hoping and praying everything goes well. But I know a lot of times and on a lot of shows, yours and other people's, it's always been, well, what's the fans? The fans will be willing to do this, do this, do this. And I think the presidents of universities and all people in the decision-making guys, they got to take 2 things in consideration: the money factor, and honestly, it's more important that the players be healthy than the fans. Honestly, that's where the universities can make their judgment call. And if you think of it from that way, we don't really know how it's going to be when the players start really practicing, pushing against each other. It's a contact sport, so it's a whole new level of what if.
I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun. Either way, man, if they played in the back of a field, I'm going to be there. And if they're playing at Bryant-Denny,
do my best to be there.
Yeah, sure. So it's.
But hey, man, I enjoy the show. As always, man, I'm always here for you. If you need anything, you holler at me. I'm going to make a trip to North Alabama tomorrow, like you did. Go up to Lawrence County and visit family tomorrow for a little bit. In the process of getting a roof put on the house, I got to be back Thursday, so at least a one-day trip would be better than none. But
it's good to hear your voice, man. I'm glad we one day, man, we got to go do lunch. We got to go. I mean, I hate to be like a reunion on the air, but let's go do it.
I'll give you a call Thursday. I'll be back in town Thursday after the roof guy leaves at like 3 o'clock.
Hey, I do lunch every day. I do lunch every day. I don't miss lunch. I mean, it's like
you can look at me. I just left the gym trying to get so I can get in there and get there with you. So hey, I'll call you. I'll text you on Thursday or Friday.
Sounds good. Thank you, Denon.
All right, man.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Looked up at the name, and Denon is a guy that I travel with to the away games. We make it to the away games, have a lot of fun, and looked up at his name. We continue with more Alabama football. Man, we've had a great conversation. How much time I got? About 3 minutes left? 2 minutes. We'll take you guys back. You don't think recruiting involves the program? I want to take you guys back 2008, Nick Saban's big class, right? Nick Saban. 30 enrollees, because that was back when you could sign the limits. You ready? Or more than a limit. Julio Jones, Tyler Love, B.J. Scott, Jarrell Harris out of Gadsden City played. Mark Barron, I know he was still playing in the pros. Courtney Upshaw, Mark Ingram, Lonzo Lawrence, Barrett Jones, Burton Scott, Star Jackson, Michael Williams, who played several years in the NFL, coaching at Pickens County over in Reform. Marcel Darius, Devontae Bolton, Chris Jackson, Chris Jordan, Damian Square, who played quite a few years in the NFL, may still be in San Diego. I got to look that up. John Michael Boswell from County High, who played significant football for the University of Alabama, and overall just a great dude, man. John Michael Boswell, Robbie Green, Destin Hood chose baseball. He chose baseball. I'm just talking about this class. St. Paul's Episcopal there in Mobile. Dante Hightower, Leesburg, Tennessee, Marshall County High School. Brandon Lewis, Robert Lester, Glenn Harbin, Ivan Matchett, Terrence Cody, Jermaine Prayer, Andre Billingsley, Brad Smelly from right here, American Christian Academy, played a significant role in Alabama's team. Corey Smith, Kerry Murphy, and Melvin Ray. That was one recruiting class. We'll talk more about that next time. Big thanks to Tommy. Big thanks to Bryant. Thank you so much, man. You guys are awesome. William Barcher. See you next time on Alabama Tradition, the past, present, and future of the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Dell